If you'd been there that day, you might have sworn the world stopped when Evelyn Hart hit her knees, dust frozen midair, whispers tightening like a noose, right before a lonely cowboy decided she wouldn't fall alone. The winter wind moved like a living thing across the empty Main Street, dragging trails of dust that curled around boots and doorsteps, as if the whole town were holding its breath. It was a kind of cold that made the world feel hollow, where every sound carried too far and every silence landed heavy. And in the center of that silence stood a single wooden post, worn smooth by sun and storms, but never meant for what it held today. Evelyn Hart hung against it, wrists bound, back raw with fresh lashes. Her hair, once brushed neat that morning, clung to her cheeks in dusty strands, hiding the tears that slipped down unnoticed. A hush fell over the crowd that circled her, the kind made not of pity, but of judgment. Some looked away, pretending discomfort. Others watched without blinking, as if her pain were a sermon. And behind them all, boots planted firm, Sheriff Amos Burke stood as still as a tree stump, face carved from stone. The final lash snapped through the air. Evelyn didn't scream. She didn't flinch anymore either. Her body simply folded at the knees, sagging forward, breath leaving her in a single trembling exhale. For a moment the whole world seemed to drift with her, time slowing until the dust hung, suspended like snow. Then the rope was cut, and she crumpled to the ground, palms scraping across the dirt. When she tried to rise, her legs wobbled. The women nearest her stepped back, as if she carried some sickness. Mrs. Hargrove's voice carried sharp across the quiet. A woman who refuses a man ain't fit for this place. Others murmured their agreement. Some shook their heads. Most simply turned away. Evelyn stumbled toward the alley behind the general store, clutching the halves of her torn shawl around her shoulders. Every step burned through the stripes on her back. She sank beside a stack of barrels, breath shuddering, the cold settling into her bones. She had come west believing she might find freedom, but the world had only fit new shackles around her wrists, and today the shackles had cut deep. A shadow detached itself from the stable rail across the street. Colt Remington watched her go, jaw tightening beneath a week's worth of scruff. He had seen more than his share of suffering since his wife died 2 winters ago, but something about Evelyn's quiet collapse struck deeper than the usual tragedies Western towns learned to ignore. He stepped toward the alley not quickly, but carefully, the way a man approaches a spooked horse. Evelyn barely noticed him until something soft touched the dirt beside her. Colt's coat, fur-lined, warm, still carrying the faint scent of sage from the ride that morning. "If you need it," Colt murmured. He didn't wait for an answer. He didn't even glance at her face. He simply nodded once and stepped back, giving her space to choose. She didn't pick up the coat. Not yet. But her hand inched toward it when he walked away. Jonas Pike found Colt lingering near the alley, arms crossed. "You best leave that woman be," Jonas muttered. "Helping her'll bring you nothing but trouble." Colt didn't look at him. "Ain't trouble I'm worried about." Behind them, the gossip rose again, sharp cold, spoken loud enough for Evelyn to hear. She should have just married Silas. She brought this on herself. No woman says no to a man with land. Each word felt like a pebble thrown at her ribs. She curled inward, trying to make herself smaller against the barrel. Her breath hitched as if the judgment itself had weight. Colt shot Jonas a look that silenced further talk, but the damage was done. Night crept into the town like spilled ink. The lanterns burned low. Evelyn stayed hunched beside the barrel, trembling with pain she could hardly breathe through. When footsteps returned, she braced herself. But it was Colt again, holding a tin cup of water and a clean strip of cloth. He set them on a crate a few feet from her. "Ma'am, you're hurt. Let me leave this here. Use it if you want." No command. No pity. Only a gentle offering. Evelyn's voice was a rasping whisper. "Why are you helping me?" Colt's face softened. "Because no one helped me when I needed it." He walked away, boots echoing down the alley. Evelyn reached shaking hands toward the water, wincing as the cup cooled her cracked lips. The cloth she pressed to her back sent fire through her nerves, and before she knew it, a sob clawed its way out of her. It wasn't loud. It was the kind that slipped out without permission, the kind that meant something had finally broken. She didn't hear Silas Maddox approach until his shadow fell over her. "Well now," he drawled, reeking of whiskey. "Look at you. Should have spared yourself all this, and said yes." He grabbed her arm, yanking her upright. She gasped, pain flashing through her spine. "You belong to me, whether you like it or not. Sheriff made that clear." She tried to pull away, voice barely there. "Let go." Silas tightened his grip. "I'll finish what the law started if I need to." The alley darkened as another figure stepped into the faint lamplight. Colt's voice came low, steady, cold as river stone. "Let go of her, Silas." Silas sneered. "What's this?" The lonely widower looking for company. Colt didn't respond. He only stepped closer, slow and deliberate, until Silas's smirk twitched with uncertainty. Colt's presence wasn't loud, wasn't violent. It was the kind of quiet strength that made lesser men uneasy. Silas dropped Evelyn's arm with a curse. "You don't want to make me your enemy, Remington." "You did that yourself," Colt answered. Silas spit at the dirt and stalked off, stumbling down the dark road. Evelyn sagged to her knees again. Colt knelt beside her, not touching, only near. "You're safe with me," he said quietly. And it didn't sound like a vow. It sounded like a hope he whispered into the world, praying it would be true. When she tried to stand, he offered his arm. She hesitated, then slowly took it, choosing his help rather than falling into it. They walked together through the cold night toward his cabin at the edge of town, a small place tucked beneath cottonwoods, where the world felt softer. Inside, the cabin was warm from a wood stove, everything neatly kept. Evelyn noted the quiet sadness in the way things were arranged, a single plate on the table, a faded scarf hanging on a chair, boots polished, but rarely worn. Colt moved with gentle habit, fetching blankets, lighting a lamp. "You can take the bed," he said. "I'll keep to the floor." She shook her head weakly. "I can't. You need rest more than I need comfort." His tone held no room for pride or protest. Just truth. Evelyn lowered herself onto the mattress, exhaustion pulling her under like deep water. Colt turned away to give her privacy, tending the fire with slow motions. She drifted into sleep before she could thank him. When she woke, the sun painted soft gold across the cabin floor. Her back was freshly bandaged, not tightly, only enough to keep the wounds clean. Colt poured coffee into a tin cup. "You patched me," she whispered. "Only what needed patching." Evelyn felt something fragile spark inside her, a faint sense of worth she hadn't felt in years. But word traveled fast in small towns, and soon Mrs. Hardrove's voice carried from the general store, spreading rumors like wildfire. Colt Remington took her in. A decent man wouldn't shelter ruined goods. Evelyn heard every whisper. Shame seeped into her ribs, cold as the winter wind. "I'm bringing trouble to your doorstep," she murmured. Colt shook his head. "The trouble was already here. You just made it visible." But trouble didn't stop with rumors. That evening, Silas rode up to Colt's cabin with 2 ranch hands, the horses kicking up dust like storm clouds. Colt stepped outside, empty-handed, blocking the doorway with nothing but the weight of his presence. Silas sneered. "I'm taking what's mine." Colt didn't step aside. His voice was calm. "She's not yours." Silas moved to shove past him, but before Colt could respond, another voice rang out. "I said no." Evelyn stood in the doorway, shoulders shaking, hair wind-tossed, but eyes clear with a strength deeper than the pain etched across her skin. Her voice trembled, but it didn't break. It was the first time anyone in that town had heard her speak with power. Silas froze. Men like him knew how to fight fists and guns, but not dignity. He cursed under his breath, swung onto his horse, and rode off, his ranch hands scrambling after him. Silence settled, the kind that feels like a page turning. Evelyn's knees buckled and Colt caught her, not in a romantic embrace, but in a moment of pure human relief. She cried softly, her face buried against his shoulder, letting go of weeks, months, maybe years of fear. "You ain't what they say," Colt murmured. "You're brave." Evelyn closed her eyes. For the first time, she believed it. And somewhere in the hush of the cottonwoods, Hope rose like a sun that hadn't dared show itself in far too long. Narrators like me, old souls tucked in dusty corners of saloons, will tell you this much. Out here in the wide, unforgiving West, a life can turn not by bullets or battles, but by a single gentle voice reminding a wounded heart it belongs to this world. Remember this, wherever you walk, your no has power, and your worth is never something a crowd gets to decide.